Deliciously with Ara. Today we're gonna make Miocchi Bokkeum. To subscribe and like! So Miocchi Bokkeum, basically Miocchi is the Korean version of a Dilis. It's one of the most popular viands or Banchan because as you've probably seen in Korean restaurants, we love to have lots of different kind of side dishes on our meals. And this one, the Miocchi or the Dilis, this is a very good source of calcium, and it's also it can be done in a very sweet, tangy flavors. So kids can even love it, and it's good for all ages. This is a really good way that, especially when the cool year is soon opening, a great recipe to have as a baon for your children. So I hope you can make this very simple recipe with me. First, we need these packs of Dilis that I got from Korean groceries. I actually went to the local grocery and I saw na meron din kayo mga Dilis here in the Philippines market. Kaso nga lang, I noticed that the Dilis here were a little more saltier. So I would suggest that if you want to get the very authentic taste of the Miocchi Bokkeum or the Dilis, try to get it from the Korean groceries, and you can get in like a very small Dilis like this, parang super baby fish. And there's another kind of Miocchi, also a Dilis, which comes in a little bit of bigger version like this. So I'm gonna teach you how you can make both. It's very simple. If actually you're gonna use this kind of the very small, madali lang siya gawin because all we just have to do is strainer it. But if we're gonna use this kind of a bigger one, kailangan medyo matrabaho ng konti because we're gonna have to remove the head and a little bit of the black thing inside. So first, I'm gonna teach you how to clean up our Dilis. So let's say nakakuha kayo ng this kind size ng ating anchovies. Actually, some would prefer na pwede naman ito diretso lutuin, but it just happens na medyo maging mapait if we tend to not remove the head. And meron siya parang konting maliit na black part. They are supposed to be like the something that you're not really recommended to eat. It gives a parang medyo masyadong mapait na flavor. So if you want to have a very clean taste, much better tanggalin natin. Although it's very optional, matrabaho nga lang. So let's say if gagamit kayo ng ganitong maliliit na Dilis or Miocchi, we're gonna have to just strainer a little bit. Mag-strain ng konti because sometimes there's this very parang small fine parts, parang powdered na siya. And then when we make the Miocchi Bokkeum or the stir-fried Dilis, medyo parang it looks very hindi siya masyadong malinis tingnan. So get a strainer and then just like parang strain natin ng konti. And we just want to get rid of those small parang powdered forms ng Miocchi na nadudurog sa package. So ngayon, it's super easy now. We're ready to cook. I'm just gonna first heat up my pan. Get a wok para hindi siya masyadong matatapon. And then while I'm heating up my pan, if I'm gonna use this kind of very small na maliliit na parang baby, the finest Miocchi, actually in Korea we call this shilchi almost kasi shil means parang thread. So parang super maliliit. I'm gonna recommend using parang chopped garlic like this. But if I'm gonna use the bigger kind of Miocchi, of course it's optional, you can use a chopped. But later on with the bigger ones, gagamit ako ng parang sliced na garlic na lang. So here I can also add some kind of like just some nuts if you want, and if you're not allergic, any kinds of nuts that you can get na unsalted, it's very good. So I have here some peanuts. You can actually use some pine nuts, cashew, almonds, walnuts, whatever kinds of nuts that you want na unsalted and unflavored. It's really good to complement. It gives a very nutty aroma flavor on our Miocchi Bokkeum mamaya. So now I can see that medyo mainit na yung aking pan. I'm gonna turn this on a very low fire kasi napakadali lang talaga siya maluto and madali lang masunog. The least, I'm gonna first stir fry my Miocchi. The reason I'm gonna stir fry is because when I give a little bit of a fry on the initial heat, parang it helps lessen yung pagiging malansa ng ating Miocchi or the Dilis. And it also gives an extra crunch. So when we eat it later, parang it has a very distinctive, parang masarap na kagat, which can be done from this kind of stir frying. So it's best to use a non-stick pan. But if you don't have a non-stick pan, if you have like the stainless or any kind of pan, you can add around 1 or 2 tablespoons of very little oil and just give a little bit of a toss lang. So be careful na hindi siya masusunog. I just want to release yung pagiging malansa, the smell, and a little bit of a texture on the bite. And actually, you can also already add our nuts. It's up to you what kind of nuts you want to use. Pwede kayo mag-slice para mag-chop pa ng gusto ninyo, or if you want to have a little bit more of a bite like me, you can actually use like this. This is around 200 grams of my unsalted peanuts. Well, I'm just probably gonna use just half of it lang. And di ba also the nuts, it's also good to have a little bit of a roast before we use it for cooking para lang magkaroon ng para it boosts out the flavor of it. So just give a very quick stir fry. Actually, it really comes on a personal preference as well kasi may mga ibang tao na they really want their MYEOLCHI bokkeum na very crispy and some naman they just want it very soft. Either way, it's just really good to give a quick stir fry and before na masunog siya, which is very, it can happen very quick kasi maliliit talaga yung ating MYEOLCHI. I've actually stir fried around 2 minutes. I'm gonna turn off my fire and then palamigin ko siya ng konti. I'm just gonna set this aside on my separate bowl. The reason na gusto ko siya palamigin ng konti because parang gusto ko talaga sumingaw the smell of the malansanes of my dilis or my MYEOLCHI. Now, on the same pan, I'm gonna turn off my fire. Still on a medium to low heat. Very sensitive kasi ang napakadali talaga siya maluto. So just always cook it on a very low fire. I'm gonna add 3 tablespoons of my cooking oil. Actually, I'm just gonna use around 2 tablespoons because I think that's enough kasi non-stick pan naman ang ginagamit ko. And I have here my minced garlic, around 1 tablespoon or very generous amount because I love garlic. And then we're gonna make the garlic oil. I don't want to burn my garlic so hinaan ko talaga yung fire. Because garlic is napakadali talaga siyang maluto before it turns very brown. I just want to bring out the aroma of it. I'm gonna already add in my MYEOLCHI na na-stir fry ko siya kanina. Actually, the amount of MYEOLCHI I use is around 1 cup or around 200 grams. Of course, you can always adjust it. And dahil ang MYEOLCHI naman is parang side dish lang, parang viand lang, we only eat parang very little amount of it per meal. So probably this is gonna be good for like a 1 week of a banchan or a viand for your family of 4. Of course, it really depends diba? So I'm just gonna toast in my MYEOLCHI with my garlic and the oil para lang ma-coat fully ang ating flavors. You know, madaling mag-burn ang garlic, also my MYEOLCHI, and if especially the garlic, kung nasunog siya, it gives a very bitter flavor. So I just want to make sure na I'm just parang dinadry off ko lang yung mga moisture content ng ating garlic so is to my MYEOLCHI. So once I've actually fully coated my MYEOLCHI with my garlic, sa isang tabi, I'm gonna now make my sauce. So I have here my toyo. I'm gonna add just a very slight, like around 1/2 tablespoon of my toyo. The MYEOLCHI itself on this 1 cup is medyo maalat-alat na siya. And the reason I'm adding my toyo is actually just to coat another level of saltiness. And I don't really want this to be parang maalat na maalat. So I'm just gonna add around 1/2 tablespoon of my toyo or very little lang, less than 1 spoon. And I just want to coat it with the aroma of my sizzling toyo. And 1 tablespoon of my sugar, white sugar. And I have here my cooking wine. Although this is optional, kung meron kayo, you can add. If you don't have to stress yourself. I'm just gonna add 1 tablespoon. I always add cooking oil when I use like any kind of parang seafood dish. Like, you know, this dilis itself is medyo malansa. And just to get rid of that malansang smell, I always add my cooking wine. So now, i-coat ko siya ng mabilis. And we're just gonna have to melt our sugar in it and turn off the fire agad. And once the fire is off, I'm gonna add in 1 tablespoon of my rice syrup or corn syrup. If you have a corn syrup, it's really good to add onto your banchan or viands because nagbibigay siya ng parang extra gloss. But if you don't have, you can actually add 1/2 tablespoon of the sugar kanina when we added after our toyo. So this is 1 tablespoon of my rice syrup, just to give an extra gloss. And as you can see, enough ko na yung fire because I'm just gonna use the heat of the pan and yung aking dilis just to cook it up. Kasi if you overcook it, magiging matigas ang ating parang dilis, parang nagiging candied na siya. So I'm just gonna add a little bit of, just a touch of my syrup just to give a gloss. And now, always, diba, Korean food's good with sesame seeds, a very generous amount of sesame seeds. And drizzle with our sesame oil. And as always, I've said that when we add sesame oil, make sure that the fire is off. Kasi parang lumalabas, parang it just drives out the very aromatic smell of my sesame oil. So now my MYEOLCHI bokkeum is done. We're gonna transfer it on an airtight container because we can store this as a banchan, put it on the ref, and you can probably keep this as long as like a week, good long for your family. So now let's transfer it on our lagayan. So now as you can see, if you're gonna use a bigger dilis, as you've seen, ang dami kong ulo na tinanggal, and also like the black part na parang tayo because it's very bitter. Now we're gonna use this only the body parts because this one will give us a cleaner taste of my Miocchi or the dilis bokkeum. Same thing with my small ones, how we're gonna do, I'm gonna turn off my fire sa aking wok. So when I'm gonna heat up my kawali, I'm gonna use up the very strong fire para lang mabilis uminit. And as I can feel the heat of it, I'm gonna lower my fire, medium-low heat. Always when you're gonna do the Miocchi bokkeum, medium to low heat dapat ang ating fire. And same thing, I'm just gonna roast it once para lang matanggal yung pagiging malansang smell of my dilis. So on the very low fire, I'm just parang iniinit ko yung aking dilis because I want to give a little bit of a crunch as well. Hindi masyado crispy dapat. The reason being kasi mga dried na like this na Miocchi, normally sinisisip niya lahat ng mga smell ng kanyang surroundings. So normally if it was stuck on the freezer for a long time, lahat ng mga smell ng ating freezer is nandito na. So by heating it up, it parang releases that kind of bad smells or any kind of malansang smell it could have. Now, as you can see, medyo nagbo-brownish ng konti ang ating Miocchi. I'm gonna turn off my fire. And isa-set aside ko lang siya ng konti para lang medyo mahangin ng konti and lumamig. And on the same pot, I'm gonna prepare some garlic. And of course, you can either choose the minced garlic, kaya na ginamit ko here sa maliliit na ating dilis. But just to medyo magkaroon ng konting balance on the shape, I'm gonna use sliced garlic for a bigger kind of my dilis. So I've already sliced around 5 cloves of garlic, just a little bit lang. And this is around 200 grams of my Miocchi or dilis na around 1 cup. So sa pinaka-low fire, I'm gonna add 1 to 2 tablespoons of my cooking oil. And add in my garlic right away bago uminit ang ating oil para ma-release ang aroma ng ating garlic. And if you want to give a little bit of a kick of the spiciness on the soy version, I have here isang siling pang sinigang. That's how they call it in the market, diba? I'm gonna give a little bit of a slice para lang may konting kagat ng spice. Try to cook your garlic sa low-medium fire kasi I'm not trying to parang burn my garlic. Gusto ko na talaga lumabas ang smell and the flavor of the aroma of my garlic. And before it really sizzles, I'm gonna add it na rin my sili. And I can already smell the very spiciness of my chili and my garlic. Nakakaiyak talaga ang kanyang smell. So be careful. I'm gonna add in already my dilis na pinalinis ko kanina. And give a full toast just to coat my dilis with the smell of my garlic and my chili. And put my dilis on one side. I'm gonna also add in my soy sauce. 1 tablespoon of my soy sauce to 1 cup of my dilis. And 1 tablespoon of my sugar. And when it sizzles na, before it caramelizes, coat it with your dilis. And optional is your cooking wine. I have a cooking wine, so I'm gonna add, pero if wala kayong cooking wine, it's okay. I'm gonna add around 2 tablespoons. And always be masipag because it's very quick lang and then we don't wanna burn because of course, pumapait siya. And I can see na medyo fully melt and nag-coated na lahat ng ating mga seasonings like our garlic, our soy sauce, sugar, and my cooking wine. I'm gonna turn off the fire kasi mainit na siya. I'm gonna add in my cooking syrup or the rice syrup. Now, if you don't have cooking syrup, same thing with kanina ginawa natin, just add 1/2 tablespoon of your white sugar. So this is 1 tablespoon of my cooking syrup or my rice syrup. Just coat it para magkaroon ng magandang gloss. And of course, top it off with your sesame seeds. And lastly, in all Korean meals, we love to have a touch of our sesame oil. I'm gonna drizzle konting sesame oil. Must-try recipe! So tada! Here is my Miocchi bokkeum. I made one with a very small dilis, the silchi, just with nuts. And here on the bigger version, I had here my some Sili. Of course, you can always add here also the kinds of nuts you have at home. And I hope you enjoy. Very simple to make. It's probably like less than 5 minutes every morning. You can just simply make it up for your banchan for the day. Great as a baon as well, and store it on the ref on an airtight container like this. It will be a very good emergency food to actually spread it on your table. So I hope you enjoy. Very simple recipe, yet very delicious and nutritious as well. So see you next time. Bye!
It's super masarap.
The kick of the sili gives a very spiciness bite to it. Very good if you want to have this kind of... Actually, this is also good for any kind of finger food or pika-pika as well. And let's try the traditional soy version. My kids love it. I'm pretty sure your kids would love it too. Very sweet, very tasteful. And the bite na binibigay ng peanuts, very aromatic as well. Very healthy as well, so I hope you enjoy!